Why would a man trained never to scream break down into a single, panicked plea for help? Thick mist strangled the midnight landscape, clinging to the ruins of an abandoned Afghan town like a burial shroud. Somewhere in that ghostly silence, 8 highly trained operators, men who had been forged in every harsh corner of the world, were about to be erased. The static on Lieutenant Mason Ross's headset wasn't just interference. It was dread, hissing, taunting, filling the dead air where Command's voice should have been. He crouched behind a crumbling wall, his knuckles white around the grip of an M4 slick with sweat and dust. Echo 7 compromised, his voice cracked, but he forced it steady. Mission blown, surrounded on all sides. Nothing, no reassurance, no extraction order, just the kind of silence that felt like abandonment. He looked down the line of weary faces, Rodriguez, barely 24, crossing himself in the dark. Dawson with a busted lip from an earlier firefight. Jenkins, the team's medic, quietly sliding the last magazine into his vest. They'd all seen hopeless nights, but this one felt different. Mason exhaled a trembling breath. "This is it, brothers," he whispered. Determination was armor over his fear. "We'll fall fighting." A movement in the mist, a flicker of silhouettes closing in with practiced precision. 30 fighters, maybe more, encircling them. Too tight, too coordinated to be simple insurgents. Mason's heart thumped like war drums beneath his body armor. Rodriguez's whisper cracked. "Lieutenant, they're toying with us." Then cutting through static like mountain water, a woman's voice. Sharp, cool, controlled. "Phantom in position, I see them. Hold your ground." For a heartbeat, Mason wondered if he'd imagined it. A woman? Here. The SEALs exchanged confused looks, but before they could react. Crack. 2 kilometers away, unseen, a commander's head snapped back. His body collapsed like a marionette with cut strings. Chaos erupted, shouts in Pashto, confusion where there had been precision. "Sniper!" someone screamed. Another crack, another body fell. Mason's breath caught. Whoever she wasn't guessing. Every shot was a promise. The voice returned, calm and detached. "Target down, eliminating second in command." Rodriguez whispered wide-eyed, "Who the hell?" "Windows opening northeast," she said. "Move on my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark." Mason didn't hesitate. He signaled, and the team surged through the gap her chaos created. Behind them, 3 more cracks split the night. 3 more hostiles hit the ground. As they scrambled into better cover, Mason risked a glance back. The mist swallowed everything. Their guardian angel had vanished as quickly as she'd appeared. By the time they reached the extraction point, 17 enemy fighters lay dead, each felled by a single, impossibly distant shot. "Unknown marksman, this is Echo 7. Mason's voice trembled with relief as the helicopter's rotors thumped nearer. "You saved our lives today. Identify yourself." Static stretched, long seconds, then barely audible. "Just a ghost who remembers what service means." Silence again. Fort Bragg's mess hall buzzed with the usual chatter the next morning. Metal trays clinking, laughter echoing off drab walls. But at a back table, tucked into shadow, a slim woman with raven black hair bound in a regulation bun sat alone, her shoulders hunched slightly under a standard-issue uniform that fit just loosely enough to make her forgettable. Alexis Echo Morgan didn't want to be seen. Her sharp eyes flicked over a weather notebook filled with rows of wind data, bullet drops, pressure notes, the quiet math of life and death. She traced a figure with her pencil, adjusting for humidity. At a nearby table, Master Sergeant Ryan Dawson, stocky, confident, 2 decades of service etched into the lines around his eyes, jerked his chin toward her. "Look at Echo over there," he said, loud enough for his men to hear. "Rifles bigger than her. How's she supposed to fight a real war?" A few chuckles followed. They weren't cruel exactly, just blind. Echo didn't flinch, didn't even glance up. She'd heard it all before. That afternoon at the range, the veterans lined up to show off. 500 meters, a simple warm-up for real shooters. But one after another, their shots fell wide. Scope shifts, bad wind calls, excuses flowed like whiskey at the base bar. From the back, Echo watched silently, memorizing every mistake. When Ranger Master Alvarez called her forward, she stepped up without swagger, just quiet precision. She settled behind her custom M110 SAS rifle, fingers working each adjustment with a jeweler's care. The breeze brushed her cheek, 2.5 miles per hour northeast. In, out, hold. Squeeze. The bullet struck dead center. Alvarez peered through his scope, then looked up, astonished. Holy hell, Morgan, that's a range record. By the time he looked again, she was already packing up, rifle broken down with practiced efficiency. Behind her, Dawson muttered, lucky shot. But Echo knew the truth. Luck was preparation meeting opportunity. That night, while the others drank and told war stories, she sat on her bunk, breaking down her rifle. The weapon wasn't just steel and polymer. It was her voice, the only one the world couldn't silence. Her roommate, Tors, groaned, tossing an arm over her eyes. Don't you ever do anything else? Go out, meet people, live a little. I do meet people, Echo said quietly, sliding an oiled cloth down the barrel. Just through a scope. Tors sighed and rolled over. None of them got it. They saw her size and assumed weakness, her quiet tone and assumed ineptitude, her isolation and assumed she couldn't belong. But they didn't see the phantom haunting their courses, the shadows slipping through obstacle courses like smoke, the mind calculating bullet trajectories while they were still fumbling with fundamentals. She wasn't unseen because she couldn't be seen. She chose invisibility. 3 years ago, she hadn't been Echo Morgan. She'd been something whispered in war zones, Ghost Viper, the sniper whose impossible shots turned battles, the rescuer who appeared when missions failed, the name soldiers whispered with awe until October 15th, 2019. The day she'd been ordered to take a shot she couldn't take. The day she'd refused. That day her victories were erased, her name struck from records, her future blacklisted. Now she existed in limbo, too skilled to discard, too dangerous to acknowledge. A ghost in the machine. The base alarm shattered the quiet night, a wailing siren that made even seasoned operators flinch. Echo watched through her barracks window as units scrambled to helicopters, rifles slung across broad shoulders. SEAL Team 8 geared up fast, checking maps under the harsh floodlights. A botched extraction, hostages in enemy territory. Protocols activated. But Echo knew the truth, protocols failed. And when they did, command turned to ghosts. She gathered her gear quietly. No orders, no briefing, just the whisper of instinct. Tonight, under a moonless Syrian sky, desperate men would call for help, and only she would answer. As she locked the last latch on her rifle case, memories came unbidden. The village of Zaraka, a compound that Intel had sworn was a terrorist summit, until she'd seen the truth through her scope. Children laughing, decorations fluttering, a school ceremony, not a war council. Take the shot, Colonel James Whalen's voice had crackled in her ear. These are civilians, she'd replied. Mission parameters unchanged. She refused, and in the shadows of that refusal, a conspiracy had quietly buried her. Now the same ghosts were stirring. A knock rattled her door. She opened it to find Sergeant Major Harrison, Old Bill, standing there. 61 years old, hair like snow, eyes still razor-sharp. He was the only man alive who called her daughter. They're sending a SEAL team into Ulhasaka province, he said. Hostage extraction, high-value package, but intel's shaky. Whalen's fingerprints are all over it. Echo said nothing. She didn't need to. Bill's voice softened. I've arranged for you to be the overwatch, off books. Her hands froze on her gear. Whose authority? Mine. She studied him, searching for hesitation. She found none. "You'll be alone out there," he said quietly. "No credit, no backup, if this goes bad." "It won't," she interrupted, even though the chill in her spine said otherwise. He squeezed her shoulder. "Your parents would be proud of the woman you've become, Alexis. I know I am." She swallowed hard but didn't answer. Outside, helicopters roared. Inside, Ghost Viper returned to the hunt. How do you stalk a battlefield you're not supposed to exist on? The Syrian desert stretched beneath her like a silent ocean of stone and sand. From the rear of the unmarked helicopter, Echo Morgan watched the moonless horizon sway. The pilots had been told only coordinates and cover stories. They didn't know the woman in the shadows wasn't supposed to be real. When the skids kissed the valley floor, she stepped out without a word. The rotors whipped her hair against her cheek, then faded into distance, leaving only the whisper of wind and her own heartbeat. She had 15 minutes to move, 5 to climb, 3 to disappear. Her body became a calculation, foot placement, breath control, muscle memory honed by years of missions no one would admit happened. The ridge she chose gave her a commanding view of the industrial complex ahead, a forgotten structure of concrete bones, windows black and blind. Somewhere inside, according to shaky intel, Dr. Samuel Grayson was being held. Somewhere else, maybe closer than she dared guess, waited the men who wanted the SEALs dead. Through her scope she caught the faint movement of Cooper's team 3 kilometers east. 8 figures slipping between rock and scrub, perfect choreography. Too perfect. It made the hairs on her neck rise. The building looked wrong, too quiet, too easy. No sentries, no tripwires, just silence. She whispered to herself, "Something's off." Thermal signatures bloomed across her display, bodies scattered like seeds, positioned too deliberately. They weren't guarding a hostage. They were arranging a stage. She switched channels, tried the SEAL net. Static. Of course they didn't know she existed. Overwatch to Team 8, she tried anyway. Hold position, repeat, hold. Silence. Below, Cooper's team breached the first door without resistance. The trap was springing. Her hand hovered over the trigger as she accessed the emergency override frequency, a line reserved for disasters. "SEAL Team 8, this is Phantom," she said, her voice like ice. "You're walking into an ambush, 20+ hostiles concealed, no hostage in sight, withdraw immediately." A heartbeat, 2, 3. Then Cooper's voice, tight, skeptical but trained. "SEAL 8 actual, identify yourself, authentication code." "No time," she snapped. 45 seconds before contact, north and east corridors are converging. There was the smallest pause, the kind of pause where life or death hangs then. "Warhammer copies," Cooper barked. "Defensive positions." Through her scope she watched them pivot, doors slammed, barrels trained on choke points. Not retreating but not blind anymore. The first insurgent moved too soon. His muzzle flash lit the window like lightning. Gunfire roared inside the structure. 2 SEALs took rounds but stayed on their feet. Cooper's voice carried through the chaos. "Mission compromised. Request immediate extraction." The cold reply from command. "Negative. Proceed to secondary exfil." They'd been abandoned. Echo centered her crosshairs on the enemy commander visible through a second-floor window. Wind, 3.4 mph northwest. Temperature, 68. Humidity, 42%. Distance, 2,340 m. She exhaled, squeezed. The man dropped instantly. Confusion rippled through the attackers. Another shot, another leader fell. "Phantom to Team 8, she said evenly. "Northern corridor clear, move now. Bearing 090, 20 meters to exit." They didn't hesitate. Her rifle cracked again and again. Precise, merciless, each shot a heartbeat closer to salvation. She watched men she'd never meet drag their wounded brothers toward safety. For 20 minutes she was their invisible shield, erasing threats before they could close in. By the time Cooper led his team into the ravine that would hide them from pursuit, 17 bodies cooled on the sand, each marked by her silent signature. "Phantom, this is Cooper," his voice came once they'd reached relative safety. "I don't know who you are, but you just saved 8 lives. Request link-up." She allowed herself the faintest smile. "Negative on link-up, Lieutenant. Your exfil is inbound 5 clicks northeast. Be there in 40, and bring them home." Static swallowed her. She was already dismantling her position, erasing footprints, folding herself back into myth. But before she left, a flicker of movement at the compound's edge caught her scope, a tall figure with the bearing of a special operator slipping into a black vehicle. His profile, even at distance, froze her blood. Colonel James Wayland, her former mentor, the man who had once called her his finest student. If he was here, tonight was no rescue gone wrong. Tonight was a chessboard, and she just knocked over a piece he'd placed carefully. The next morning at Fort Bragg, Lieutenant Jake Cooper stood stiff before a panel of commanders, combat dust still in his hair. He recounted the impossible shots, the mysterious voice. 17 kills, he said evenly. Each a single round, 2 clicks at night. Colonel Harmon leaned forward. "And you had no knowledge of sniper support?" "No, sir. First contact was a warning about the ambush. She called herself Phantom." A CIA liaison, severe, silent until now, snapped her folder closed. "This briefing is classified top secret. You and your men will not discuss a sniper presence. Is that clear?" Cooper hesitated. "With respect, ma'am." "Is that clear?" His jaw tightened. "Clear." Harmon waited until she left, then muttered under his breath, 17 perfect shots. Only one person I've ever heard of could do that." Later in the mess hall, conversations dulled when Echo entered for coffee. No one spoke openly, but glances lingered a second too long. She ignored them. She always ignored them. Harrison slid into the seat across from her, steam rising from his mug. "You've caused quite a stir." She kept her voice low. "Observation only until mission failure." 17 perfect shots is hardly observation. His eyes softened. "They're alive because of you." She didn't answer. At another table, Cooper watched discreetly, calculating. He'd seen the impossible. He wasn't letting it go. That night she worked in the supply room, accessing a secure terminal using Harrison's keys. The flash drive he'd slipped her contained surveillance photos. Wayland with Kyle Reeves, the former Delta operator infamous for executing wounded prisoners. Reeves had vanished years ago. Now he was alive, leaner, harder, wearing a jagged scar like a medal. The logs revealed a partial transmission. Delta team deployment confirms package viability. Proceed with acquisition phase. The SEAL mission wasn't about rescue. It was about data. Wayland and Reeves had studied their tactics, and now they'd go for the real prize. Dr. Grayson and the Apex guidance system, a quantum leap in missile tech that could render global defenses obsolete. A message blinked onto the screen, routed through Harrison's credentials but tagged with Wayland's code. Ghost Viper identified. Asset viable but compromised. Recommend immediate termination. Echo's breath went cold. Her mentor knew she was alive, knew she'd interfered, and now he wanted her erased. She shut the terminal, every movement deliberate. 3 days. That's all she had before Grayson's transport lifted from Dubai. 3 days to hunt the man who had once built her. The next morning, she requisitioned ammunition under a forged training order. In her quarters, she checked each round for imperfections, hands steady even as her mind spun through contingencies. A knock. She slid her pistol under a pillow and opened the door to find Lieutenant Cooper. His expression was neutral, but his eyes carried a storm. "Staff Sergeant Morgan," he said formally, "a word." She stepped aside. He glanced around her Spartan quarters, nodding the rifle case positioned for quick access. I've been looking into our mysterious guardian angel. There's a pattern, 7 incidents in 3 years. Same profile, extreme range, perfect accuracy. She said nothing. Before 3 years ago, he continued, that phantom didn't exist, but there was someone else, code name Ghost Viper, female, vanished after Zaraka. He stepped closer. Are you her? Her pulse didn't quicken. Her breathing stayed even. But she weighed the options: deny, evade, or trust. Why would you ask, she said finally, if you were going to report me? Because 17 of my brothers are alive because of you, he said quietly. And because somebody in command wanted us dead. I don't know who you are, but I'm on your side. The words landed heavy. Allies were liabilities, but sometimes liabilities were survival. A vibration against her thigh, Harrison's emergency signal. She glanced at Cooper. If you're serious about helping, meet me at the old firing range, 2100. Come alone. Then she was gone, already moving, a ghost between walls. At Extraction Point C, the abandoned gas station 5 miles from base, Harrison's Bronco waited, its headlights dark. She circled twice before stepping out, rifle ready. It's clear, Harrison said quietly, emerging from shadows. Talk to me, she replied. Wayland moved faster than I thought. Kill teams on its way to base, 4 contractors, all ex-special forces, shoot on site orders. He opened the Bronco's rear door, revealing hidden weapons and forged passports. We leave for Dubai tonight. My friend got us credentials. If we hesitate, we die. She hesitated. Cooper. Can't risk it. The use of her real name softened his voice. Alexis, I'm not losing another daughter. She nodded once, decision made. Hours later, aboard a C-17 bound for the Middle East, Echo stared into the darkness beyond the cargo bay doors. Somewhere below, Wayland was already moving his pieces. This wasn't just survival anymore. This was justice, and maybe redemption. The engines droned, a lullaby she didn't trust. Her mind replayed Zaraka, the decorated windows, the children's laughter, the order she refused. The moment she learned that sometimes the enemy isn't across the field, it's the man giving commands behind you. Beside her, Harrison studied satellite images on a tablet. Dubai'll be a furnace, he muttered. Grayson presents tomorrow. Apex moves the next day. They'll strike in transit. Echo nodded. Mid-air hijack, they'll want it intact. Harrison glanced at her. We could warn Delta. She shook her head. Wayland has ears everywhere. Warnings get buried. We catch them in the act. Proof of conspiracy, proof of treason. His eyes softened briefly. You've changed. So have they. Outside, dawn bled slowly across the horizon. A thin red line, like the edge of a rifle sight. In 3 days, the world might change forever. Why would a decorated officer risk everything for a single piece of stolen technology? Dubai shimmered in the furnace heat, a skyline of glass spires stabbing a cloudless sky. From her vantage on a service balcony across from the Burj Al Arab, Echo Morgan steadied her high-powered spotting scope, eyes scanning the conference hall windows. Inside, defense ministers and contractors sipped coffee beneath crystal chandeliers. They had no idea the future of global security perched, vulnerable, in their midst. Dr. Samuel Grayson's hands moved animatedly as he presented Apex's next-gen guidance algorithms, carefully vague for a room filled with competing nations. He looked every inch the confident scientist, tailored suit, unshakable smile, unaware he'd become prey. Target confirmed, she whispered into her comm. Harrison's voice crackled faintly from his covert position near the service entrance. Copy. No sign of Delta yet, or Reeves. Echo adjusted her scope, scanning rows of suits and uniforms. Then her breath caught. Third row, blue dress uniform, silver oak leaves, the square jaw she remembered, Colonel James Wayland. Her pulse quickened despite herself. 3 years had done nothing to blunt his presence. He was still a man whose calm could bend a room. "Visual on Wayland," she murmured. "Confirmed?" Harrison asked. "Confirmed, purpose unknown." Wayland remained seated through the applause, then rose smoothly and approached Grayson. A handshake, a brief exchange. To the room it looked like courtesy. To Echo it was a predator weighing its prize. He departed through the main doors, stepping into a waiting black Mercedes. She memorized the plate, then slipped down through service corridors, a borrowed hotel staff keycard opening the back exit. Minutes later, she was astride a motorcycle 2 blocks away, the engine's hum swallowed by city traffic as she tailed the Mercedes south. Dubai's glitter gave way to industrial sprawl. Shipping cranes towered over a labyrinth of containers. The Mercedes pulled beside a nondescript warehouse. 2 men with military posture guarded the door. She parked 2 blocks out, ditched her jacket to alter her profile, and approached on foot, weaving between stacks of containers. Her boots made no sound. Her breath was a measured whisper. Wayland disappeared inside. She climbed a maintenance ladder up to the roof's edge and slipped through a hatch onto a catwalk. Below, the warehouse floor opened, a mock-up of a C-17 transport interior. 6 men in full tactical gear rehearsed fast-rope insertions and cockpit breaches. Wayland stood beside a hulking figure directing the drill, Kyle Reeves. Even from this distance, Reeves's scarred jawline was unmistakable. 3 years had carved him leaner, harder. His very stillness radiated violence. Echo's stomach tightened. Reeves was supposed to have disappeared, disgraced, and exiled. Now he was alive and working with Wayland. "Got eyes on Reeves," she whispered. "They're running a C-17 assault," Harrison answered. "Mid-air hijack." "Affirmative." The plan snapped into focus. They wouldn't shoot down Grayson's transport, they'd take it intact. The apex prototype, the scientist, a perfect theft. She began to backtrack. A floorboard creaked underfoot. Reeves's head snapped upward, eyes narrowing. For 3 heartbeats they stared, predator and phantom, though she remained shrouded in darkness. Then Wayland said something, pulling Reeves's gaze away. She slipped out, every sense raw. By the time she reached the motorcycle, sweat traced a cold line down her spine. "Harrison," she murmured, "we have confirmation this isn't rogue, it's orchestrated." "Return to hotel. We've got a complication," he said, voice tight. "What kind?" "Lieutenant Cooper just landed in Dubai, brought 7 SEALs." The hotel suite they'd secured had been transformed into an operations center. Maps pinned across walls, encrypted radios lined on the table, weapons hidden in innocent-looking luggage. Echo paced, her boots whispering over plush carpet. "How did Cooper find us?" she asked. Harrison's weathered face showed reluctant admiration. "He's resourceful, pieced together comm logs, transport authorizations, probably bribed a flight clerk." "Or Wayland sent him to track us," she countered. Before Harrison could reply, the secure line buzzed. Cooper's voice came through, steady. "Requesting meet, alone, 1 hour." Echo's lips pressed thin. "Could be a trap." "Or a lifeline," Harrison said. An hour later, at a quiet restaurant 3 blocks from the hotel, Cooper entered a private room alone. He submitted to a jammer sweep before Harrison sat across from him. "That's quite a vacation," Harrison said dryly. 8 sailors in Dubai, off the books." Cooper's expression didn't waver. "We're not here for sightseeing." "Then why are you here?" "To finish what started in Syria." He leaned forward, eyes dark. "Someone used us as bait, nearly killed my team. I want answers." Harrison's jaw tightened. "That's a career-ending accusation." Cooper didn't blink. 8 good men almost died, careers worth less than their lives. A door opened. Echo stepped in silently. Cooper rose automatically, then froze. Recognition flared. She nodded to the chair. "Sit." He studied her openly for the first time without mist or gunfire between them. She looked smaller than he remembered, but somehow larger too. "We identified the threat," she said. "Wayland and Reeves plan to hijack Grayson's transport tomorrow. Mid-air assault. 6-man team." Cooper processed the intel with a soldier's mind. "You're sure?" "I watched their rehearsal." He exhaled slowly. "Then we need to hit them tonight." "Negative," Harrison interjected. "We need proof, catch them in the act, otherwise Wayland walks clean." Cooper's jaw tightened. "Then we're on that transport. Delta Force won't allow it." "Not as SEALs," Cooper said. "As Grayson's requested security. My man Jenkins knows Grayson's nephew. We can convince him." Echo studied him. "If you're a plant for Wayland, this is a perfect setup." Cooper's eyes held hers. "I watched you take 17 perfect shots to save my men. If I were Wayland's man, you'd be dead." Silence stretched, then she gave a small nod. "If Grayson agrees, you're in, but if you betray us." He didn't need her to finish. That night the Burge conference halls glittered as dignitaries dined. In a quiet lounge, Cooper and Jenkins spoke urgently with Dr. Grayson. The scientist's initial skepticism cracked under their earnestness and quiet references to classified intel. Hours later, Echo watched from a distance as Grayson made a secure call requesting additional security on tomorrow's flight, citing a credible threat he couldn't elaborate on. The pieces shifted. In their suite, Harrison handed Echo a silenced pistol. "If they make their move early." She met his gaze. "Then the hunter becomes the bait." He smiled grimly, just like old times. For a heartbeat, she let herself remember another life, before Zaraka, before ghosts and betrayals. She'd been 25, wide-eyed, desperate to prove she could stand where men like Wayland said she didn't belong. He taught her to shoot the impossible, to vanish into landscapes, to trust that duty meant something. Now she knew better. Duty was only as pure as the men giving orders. She checked her rifle one last time, fingers tracing the custom modifications like a rosary. Outside, the desert wind carried whispers of sand across Dubai's streets. Tomorrow, the sky itself would become a battlefield. And somewhere, Wayland was already smiling. In a shadowed corner of the Port District, Wayland and Reeves reviewed the final assault plan over a map illuminated by a single lantern. "You're sure about Grayson's schedule?" Reeves asked, his voice gravelly. Wayland's eyes gleamed. "He boards at dawn. Delta escorts him halfway across the world, and by midday we own the Apex system." "And Morgan," Reeves pressed. Wayland's jaw flexed. She was supposed to stay buried, but even ghosts bleed. Reeves's grin was a predator. "Then let's make her bleed." On the hotel balcony, Echo stood with Harrison, the city glittering below like shattered glass. "You could walk away," he said quietly. "Disappear. Let someone else take this fight." She didn't look at him. "Someone else already tried. They called it Zaraka." He sighed. "You're more stubborn than I ever was." "That's because you raised me." They shared a faint, grim smile. Beneath it, unspoken truths coiled, fear for each other, anger at betrayal, the fragile hope that right might still mean something. Harrison squeezed her shoulder. "Tomorrow changes everything." Echo's eyes stayed on the horizon. "Tomorrow, ghosts come out of the shadows." What happens when the sky above becomes a battlefield, and the traitor isn't who you thought? The C-17's cargo bay thrummed with the deep vibration of its engines, a steady heartbeat against a backdrop of thin air and thinner trust. Dr. Grayson sat strapped into a jump seat near the bulkhead, fidgeting with his briefcase, unaware that the desert horizon below hid predators. Lieutenant Cooper's SEAL team played cards at a folding table, feigning nonchalance while their eyes flicked to every hatch and shadow. Harrison sat near the rear ramp, helmet off, studying the cargo straps like an old man counting blessings. And in the farthest corner, Echo Morgan checked her rifle's suppressor one more time, her face unreadable under the dim red lights. At 17,000 feet, the world looked deceptively peaceful. Clouds drifted like soft ghosts beneath them, but Echo's gut was tight. Wayland and Reeves weren't improvisers, they were planners. If they'd rehearsed a mid-air hijack, they'd thought of contingencies she hadn't. Through her earpiece, Harrison's low voice. Forward radar sweep shows nothing unusual, but Reeves won't come at us straight. She scanned the jump door's window, nothing but sky. Still, something felt off, the quiet was too perfect. Her mind flashed to Zaraka, decorations fluttering, children laughing. The day Wayland ordered her to destroy a village that wasn't a threat. The day she refused and lost her name. Now, thousands of feet above the earth, his shadow stretched toward her again. A flicker, just a fraction of movement, caught her eye through the tiny round window. "Contact," she whispered. "Port side low could be a shadow plane." Cooper was instantly alert. "Positions." The SEALs dropped their cards, rifles snapping into hands. Grayson looked up, alarm spreading across his features. The first concussion rocked the C-17, a small explosion near the left wing. Not enough to cripple, but enough to scare. The lights flickered. From the rear, a black shape rose, a modified UAV releasing a grapple that clamped onto the cargo ramp. Within seconds, figures in matte black suits zipped down fast ropes, boarding the transport like spiders. "Breach, breach," Cooper barked. Echo's rifle barked once, twice. Two intruders spun off their ropes into empty sky. Another landed and rolled behind a crate. Gunfire cracked, deafening in the metal cavern. Harrison hurled a smoke grenade toward the forward bulkhead, buying precious seconds. "Grayson down," Echo shouted, tackling the scientist behind a cargo pallet as bullets shredded netting overhead. Reeves's voice thundered across the bay. "Stand down, Morgan, you're outnumbered." She felt the weight of the moment, the years of silence, the betrayal wrapped in his words, but her hand stayed steady. Two more attackers dropped, one from Cooper's shot, another from hers. Still, Reeves's team pressed forward. Then Wayland's voice, calm and chilling over the hijacker's comm. "Alive, Reeves, we need her alive." The message wasn't meant for her ears, but it found her all the same. Another jolt. The hijackers had clipped a control surface. Warning alarms wailed. Harrison scrambled toward the cockpit. "They'll force us down, keep them off me." Echo ducked under fire, slid across the cargo floor, and put a round clean through a hijacker's scope. She caught Cooper's eye across the chaos. He nodded once, silent coordination forged in firefight. Then silence, a lull. Reeves's boots scraped against the ramp. "You had your chance," he called. "Zaraka could have been forgotten, but you had to play hero." Echo's voice was even. "Heroes don't shoot children." His laugh was low and dangerous. "Neither do survivors. We clear threats before they grow." The next moment was a blur. Reeves lunged from cover, firing. Echo's round grazed his shoulder, spinning him back behind a crate. The C-17 banked sharply, cargo straps groaning. Grayson scrambled toward Cooper, clutching his briefcase. "We're going to crash." "No," Echo said through clenched teeth, squeezing off another round. "Not today." Harrison's voice overcome. "Autopilot compromised, they've hacked flight controls." Another UAV latched onto the fuselage, its claw grinding into metal. Two more hijackers zipped down. Echo's rifle was empty. She tossed it aside, drew her sidearm, and fired 3 quick shots, dropping one. The other lunged at her, taller, stronger, his helmet reflecting red light. She let his momentum carry him past, twisted his arm, and used his own weapon to end him. A sudden hiss, a tear in the fuselage. Wind screamed through the bay. Papers, straps, and an unsecured crate whipped into chaos. Cooper yelled, "Ramps destabilizing." Harrison burst from the cockpit. "They're forcing a decompression. We have minutes." Wayland's voice again, calm, cruel. "Morgan, you can't win. Apex is bigger than you. Surrender the scientist." Echo grabbed Grayson's arm. "Get to the forward jump seats. Strap in." Reeves appeared from the smoke, blood on his sleeve, rifle aimed. Last chance. The C-17 lurched violently as Echo fired. Reeves ducked, returning a burst that shattered a light fixture. Then Cooper flanked, sliding low, and slammed into Reeves. The two men grappled, rifles clattering to the deck. Reeves head-butted Cooper, sending him sprawling. Echo leveled her pistol, then froze. Behind Reeves, Wayland had boarded, his sidearm pressed to Harrison's temple. "Drop it, Alexis," Wayland said evenly, "or the old man dies." Her heart thudded painfully. The years of mentorship, the trust, the quiet betrayal, all of it collided in her chest. She lowered the pistol slightly, but her eyes never wavered. Wayland's expression softened as if to an errant student. "You were the best, the one I believed in, but you still don't understand. The world isn't saved by morals, it's saved by control." Harrison spat at the floor. "That's what tyrants always say." A warning klaxon shrieked, critical altitude loss. The aircraft dipped, gravity tugging. Wayland's voice hardened. "The scientist or the crash, choose." Echo took a step closer, the pistol still low. "You taught me to look for angles, to see beyond the target." Wayland's eyes narrowed. And you forgot, I learned from the best." She shifted her weight, firing a single shot not at Wayland but at a hydraulic lever above him. The cargo door's locking pin released. A section of the ramp dropped slightly, startling him. Harrison wrenched free and dove. Cooper, dazed but conscious, launched at Reeves again. The sudden chaos forced Wayland to grab for stability instead of firing. The C-17 bucked, alarms screaming. Echo sprinted, grabbed a fallen rifle, and covered Harrison as he regained his feet. "Get to the cockpit," she shouted. Reeves roared, swinging a fist, catching Cooper in the jaw. But Cooper countered, slamming Reeves against a crate. Wayland scrambled toward the cockpit corridor, shouting into a headset. Echo chased, heart hammering, boots slipping on the tilting deck. The cockpit door slammed ahead, locked. She glanced at Harrison. "Manual override." 2 minutes too long." She turned to Cooper. "Hold the bay." A decision snapped into place, a desperate gamble. She climbed the ladder to the avionics compartment, pried open a panel, and manually cut power to the hacked autopilot. The aircraft shuddered, dipped sharply, then stabilized just enough for the pilots to regain partial control. The hijackers, sensing failure, scrambled for their ropes. Cooper dropped two with controlled bursts. Reeves disengaged and leapt for the ramp only for Echo's shot to catch his harness, tangling him midair. His scream vanished into the night as he plunged. Wayland was gone. The remaining intruder flung himself into the darkness, preferring the fall to capture. The C-17's alarms dulled, the sky steadying. Harrison's voice came over calm. "We're stable for now." Echo stood in the wreckage, chest heaving, the weight of survival heavy on her shoulders. Cooper limped toward her, wiping blood from his mouth. That was insane. She holstered her weapon slowly. That was necessary. Grayson approached, trembling. "You saved us." "No," Echo said quietly, her eyes scanning the empty ramp. "We're not saved yet." She stepped to the edge of the open ramp and peered into the night sky. Far below, darkness swallowed the desert. Somewhere, Wayland was alive, slipping further into the shadows. For a moment, doubt pressed on her. Was she any different now, breaking rules, risking lives? But then Harrison's steady hand landed on her shoulder. "Sometimes," he said softly, "you fight in the dark so others never have to see the monsters." She nodded, her jaw tight. "Then we finish this." The C-17 carried them toward Europe, engines a weary lullaby. But in Echo's mind a storm gathered. Wayland's game wasn't over, and ghosts, she knew too well, never rested. What do you do when the man who taught you everything keeps rewriting the rules? The C-17 touched down at a NATO airfield in southern Italy just before dawn. Searchlights swept the tarmac as ground crews swarmed the battered aircraft. To most, the scene looked routine, another mission returning from the Middle East. But Echo Morgan stepped onto the tarmac with a weight that routine couldn't disguise. She could feel Wayland's ghost, still moving pieces on a board she couldn't fully see. Inside a makeshift debriefing tent, Dr. Grayson's hands shook as he poured coffee. Cooper's SEALs cleaned weapons in silence, their eyes avoiding one another. Survival tasted bitter when you knew someone in your own chain of command had tried to kill you. Harrison stood at a map table, his reading glasses perched low. "Wayland's moving fast," he said. "Reeves is gone, but you can bet there's another team already in play." Cooper leaned on the table. "We've got no chain of custody on the Apex files. No proof Wayland orchestrated the hijack. If we go public, it's our word against a decorated colonel." "Then we get proof," Echo said. Grayson swallowed hard. "My prototype, the Apex Guidance Core, is stored at a secure facility in Munich for transfer. If Wayland can't steal me, he'll steal that." Harrison tapped the map. "That's 2 borders away. He'll use back channels, contractors, no paper trail." Cooper's eyes flicked to Echo. "We could intercept him." She met his gaze. "Or he wants us to." The tent felt suddenly smaller. 2 hours later, a convoy of unmarked SUVs rolled north along the Italian coast. Echo rode shotgun beside Harrison, her rifle dismantled and concealed in a gym bag between her boots. Cooper followed in the second vehicle, SEALs tense and watchful. The highway stretched ahead like a silver ribbon, the Tyrrhenian Sea glinting to the west. But Echo's eyes kept darting to the cliffs. Too many blind turns, too many places for an ambush. "Feels wrong," Harrison muttered, fingers drumming the wheel. "It is wrong," she said softly. "Wayland doesn't leave things to chance. He's steering us." A faint ping on her secure tablet made her heart jolt, a message from an untraceable source. "Stop chasing shadows. Munich is a diversion." She stared at the screen. "He knows our route." As if on cue, an explosion tore up the asphalt ahead. The lead SUV slammed brakes, skidding sideways. Bullets raked the convoy from the cliffs. "Ambush!" Harrison shouted. Echo rolled from the vehicle, rifles snapping together in seconds. Cooper's men scrambled for cover behind guardrails. Smoke and dust choked the air. She spotted movement on the ridge, 4 shooters with suppressed rifles. Calm, methodical, trained, not mercenaries, operators. Her scope kissed her cheek. Wind 1.2 mph, distance 480 meters. She squeezed. One shooter crumpled, another ducked, returning fire. Cooper flanked left with 2 SEALs, climbing the embankment under covering fire. Harrison laid down bursts with a borrowed carbine, his old bones moving like it was 1999. Another round of explosions shook the road, small charges meant to trap them between craters. Echo crawled beneath smoke, sighting on a 3rd shooter. One clean breath, then the crack of her shot cut the ridge silence. The 4th shooter broke and ran. Echo let him go. Sometimes you leave one alive to send a message. Minutes later, Cooper slid back down the slope, face streaked with dust. All dead except one. No IDs, no comms left intact. "Wayland's signature," Harrison growled. "No proof, no trail." Grayson staggered from the SUV, coughing. "Then Munich isn't his target. He wanted us delayed, pinned." Echo's gaze fixed on the sea stretching endlessly west. "He's not after Munich. He's already ahead of us." That night, in a safe house outside Naples, the survivors gathered around a table littered with maps and half-eaten rations. Cooper's jaw was tight as he cleaned blood from a shallow graze on his arm. Echo leaned over Grayson's schematics. "What's the second Apex prototype? Where else could it be stored?" Grayson hesitated. "There's a backup unit, a decoy really, stored in Ramstein under heavy guard, but the true core is already aboard the USS Vigilant en route to Norfolk. Only Wayland and a handful of top brass knew. Then that's his play, Harrison said. He boards her before she hits Atlantic waters. Cooper nodded grimly. A Navy carrier isn't easy to hijack. Echo's voice was flat. Neither was a C-17 at 17,000 feet. The room fell silent. Harrison finally spoke. We'll need disguises, clearance codes, and a ship's manifest. I know a man in Naples who owes me a favor. Cooper smirked faintly. How many favors you got, old man? Harrison gave a small, tired grin. Enough to keep the world turning, one more time. 2 days later, a fishing trawler pitched gently in the Mediterranean swells, its hold disguised as a smuggler's den. Echo crouched among crates beside Cooper and Harrison, the salty wind whipping through a small hatch. Under cover of night, the Vigilant loomed like a floating city on the horizon, her lights muted to preserve night vision. The plan was audacious. Approach on a maintenance supply schedule forged by Harrison's contact, sneak aboard in maintenance uniforms, and blend until they reached the carrier's secured decks. As they closed the distance, Echo's mind churned. Wayland was too clever to rely on brute force. He'd weave his people into the ship's crew, strike at the exact moment everyone least expected. She touched the small pendant at her neck, a relic from her mother, smooth from years of worry. For the first time in years, fear gnawed past her walls, not fear of death, but of failing the few she still trusted. They boarded with forged badges, greeted by a bored petty officer whose yawns suggested nothing amiss. Once inside, Echo's senses sharpened. The corridor smelled of diesel and disinfectant. Every sound echoed. In the wardroom, Cooper whispered, Wayland could have men anywhere. Echo nodded, or he could already be here. 2 decks down, Wayland studied a holographic layout with Reeves's replacement, a wiry man with pale eyes known only as Kane. We strike at 0300, Wayland said. Morgan's predictable. She'll come for Grayson's prototype, not realizing she's the bait. Kane tilted his head, and if she doesn't show? Wayland's lips curled. She's already here. Hours later, in a maintenance corridor near the secure storage bay, Echo felt a shift in the air, the subtle vibration of boots on steel. She held up a hand, signaling Cooper and Harrison to halt. From the darkness, a voice, You're too late, Alexis. Wayland stepped into a strip of emergency light, his dress uniform crisp, his pistol steady. Behind him, Kane and 2 armed contractors flanked the door to the prototype chamber. Echo's heart hammered, but her voice was calm. You could have saved Zaraka, but you chose to save your career. Wayland's eyes flashed with irritation, then softened with something like pity. I chose the world. Those children were pawns for a network that would have killed thousands. You never saw the whole board. Cooper growled. That's the speech tyrants give before they start wars. Wayland's pistol didn't waver. Morgan, step aside. Walk away. You've already won. Your ghost story saved a SEAL team, embarrassed me. Don't make this your grave. She didn't move. I'm done walking away. Kane moved first, lunging forward. Echo fired. The corridor erupted in gunfire. Harrison dropped one contractor. Cooper tackled the other. Sparks lit the steel walls like lightning in a storm. Wayland disappeared through the prototype chamber door, locking it behind him. Echo sprinted after him, boots pounding metal grates, and slammed against the door panel. Locked tight. She cursed under her breath, scanning for another path. Alarms began to howl, security now aware of the firefight. Bridge will seal this deck in 60 seconds, Harrison warned. Echo's eyes darted to a ventilation shaft. Help me up. Cooper boosted her. She wriggled into the shaft, the metal cold and narrow. Her elbows and knees scraped as she crawled, heart hammering. She could hear Wayland below, preparing to move the prototype. A thought pulsed with her heartbeat. This ends tonight. How far would you crawl through darkness to stop a man you once called mentor? The ventilation shaft narrowed to a suffocating crawl space. Echo's elbows scraped raw against cold steel as the hum of the carrier's engines reverberated through her bones. Sweat trickled down her temple, but she forced her breathing shallow. One mistake and Wayland would hear the creak of metal above him. She reached a grate overlooking the prototype chamber. Below, Wayland moved with calm precision, disconnecting security clamps from the Apex guidance core. The sleek device, no larger than a suitcase, gleamed under the harsh fluorescent light. Kane's body lay crumpled against a bulkhead. Cooper's earlier shot had found its mark. Wayland spoke quietly to himself, a habit she remembered from old training nights. One more step, and the world is ours. She steadied her pistol through the grate, but doubt flickered, too many angles, too much risk. A shot through the grate could ricochet, destroy the core, or worse, set off its safeguards. She chose patience. A muffled exchange over comms drifted in, Cooper and Harrison securing the corridor, buying her time. But bootsteps approached fast, a security detail responding to the alarms. Wayland heard it too. He hoisted the core into a reinforced case, snapped the latches, and reached for a secure radio. Extraction team, prepare for retrieval. Echo's pulse thundered. She unlatched the grate as quietly as she could, dropped silently behind a stack of crates, and leveled her pistol. Step away from the case. Wayland froze, then slowly he turned. His expression was almost tender. Alexis, you were always the best of us. Not yours anymore, she said. Bootsteps thundered outside the chamber. She couldn't let this drag on. He took a step forward, lowering his voice. You think you understand what Apex means? Deterrence is dead. Nations are blind. Apex gives us order. Her jaw clenched. You mean control. Control prevents chaos, he said. You saw Zaraka. You know what happens when weak leaders hesitate. The door panel beeped, Cooper's override code buying him entry. He slipped inside, rifle raised, Harrison behind him. Put it down, Colonel, Cooper ordered. Wayland's gaze flicked to the case, then back to Echo. For a heartbeat, regret ghosted across his features. You'll regret this, he whispered. Then suddenly, he kicked the case toward a stack of crates, drawing Echo's instinct. She dove for it just as he lunged sideways, grabbing a fallen rifle. Gunfire erupted. Sparks flew as bullets chewed through steel. Cooper returned fire, pinning Wayland behind a support column. Harrison rushed to drag the case out of harm's way. Echo rolled behind a crate, heart hammering. The case was safe, but Wayland was gone, slipping through a maintenance hatch into the maze of carrier corridors. Stay with the core, she shouted, sprinting after him. The chase was a blur of metal and adrenaline. Red emergency lights bathed the passageways as klaxons wailed. Sailors scattered, shouting in confusion. Echo's boots pounded the grates, her breath sharp and controlled. She turned a corner and saw him, 20 yards ahead, vaulting a railing to descend a ladder well. He moved like a man half his age, every motion efficient, practiced. Wayland, she yelled, her voice echoed through steel. Stop. He didn't. She leapt down the ladder well, the impact jarring her knees. Ahead he bolted into the hangar deck. The vast space buzzed with alarm lights, F-35 fighters looming like silent giants. Wayland darted toward a maintenance lift, where a black-clad extraction operative waited with a hoist cable dangling from an overhead hatch. She fired, a warning shot that pinged off the deck near his boots. He didn't flinch. He grabbed the cable, clipping himself in. The operative began to winch him upward toward a hovering UAV just visible through the hatch. Echo sprinted, sliding across the deck, and caught the dangling cable just below him. The sudden weight pulled it taut, jerking Wayland. Let go, Alexis, he barked, kicking downward. She gritted her teeth, climbing. Not a chance. Above, the UAV strained against the added load. Sparks showered as the cable scraped a catwalk edge. Wayland twisted, reaching for a sidearm. She hooked a knee over the cable, swung herself up, and slammed into him. The two collided midair, spinning. The UAV lurched. The cable snapped. They plummeted 15 feet, slamming onto the deck. Pain shot through Echo's shoulder. Wayland rolled, groaning, then scrambled toward a service hatch. She rose, wincing, and staggered after him. At the hatch, he turned briefly, his face streaked with sweat and fury. "You can't kill me, Morgan. Kill me and you make me a martyr. Catch me and you'll never prove a thing." "Maybe not," she said, raising her pistol, "but I can stop you." He ducked into the hatch just as Cooper's voice crackled over comm. "Echo, deck sealing in 30, get out." She cursed and pivoted, sprinting back toward the hangar's far door as massive blast shields began to lower. She dove through a narrowing gap, rolling to her feet as the barrier clanged shut behind her. Wayland was gone again. Hours later, in a NATO safehouse in Marseille, the group regrouped. The Apex Corps rested in a reinforced crate under guard. Grayson hunched over a laptop, transmitting encrypted data. Cooper's SEALs checked perimeter security. Harrison poured whiskey into a chipped mug and handed it to Echo. She accepted silently, her fingers trembling only slightly. "You saved the Corps," he said. "Stop the hijack." She stared into the amber liquid, but not him. Cooper leaned against the doorway, arms folded. "Wayland's running, but he's wounded, and he knows we're not backing off." "He's always been 3 steps ahead," Echo said quietly, "and now he's desperate." Grayson closed his laptop. "We can alert the Pentagon, but without proof." "They'll bury it," Harrison finished. Silence settled, broken only by the distant hum of traffic outside. Cooper finally spoke. "What now?" Echo looked up, her expression steel. "We make him show his hand. He can't resist finishing this himself." The bait was simple. A rumor seeded through secure back channels suggesting Grayson would move Apex's encrypted data chip by convoy from Marseille to a coastal airstrip. Harrison leaked it using an old CIA cutout known to be compromised. By evening, the convoy rolled down a coastal highway. 2 armored vehicles, a decoy briefcase in Harrison's hands, and Echo hidden in a cliffside overwatch position. The Mediterranean glimmered under the setting sun, deceptively peaceful. Cooper's voice whispered in her ear, "Convoy at checkpoint 2, no tails yet." She scanned the cliffs. The wind carried gull cries and salt. Still, something gnawed at her. Wayland wouldn't strike on open road unless. A sharp glint from the far ridge. "Contact ridge line," she hissed. Gunfire erupted. Bullets sparked off armored plating. The SEALs scrambled, returning fire. Smoke grenades bloomed, swallowing the road in white haze. Then through her scope she saw him, Wayland, calm, surgical, directing his shooters like a maestro. She adjusted for wind, exhaled, and fired. The shot grazed a rock near his head. He ducked, signaling retreat. His men vanished into smoke and scrub. Cooper's voice came through, ragged. "They tested our defenses, didn't commit." Echo's jaw tightened. "He's not done, he's setting the board." She packed her rifle, the taste of salt and adrenaline bitter on her tongue. Wayland was bleeding resources, but desperation could make men dangerous. And she knew he wasn't hunting Apex anymore. He was hunting her. When ghosts finally face each other, does anyone walk away whole? The lower decks of the freighter moaned with every swell of the Mediterranean. Steam hissed from ruptured valves, wrapping the corridors in shifting fog. Echo Morgan moved silently, her rifle close, boots whispering against steel. Somewhere ahead, Wayland was guiding the Apex case toward a hidden exit hatch, a final gambit before dawn. She reached an intersection of pipes and bulkheads, pausing to listen. Above, faint gunfire rattled, the rival mercenaries clashing with Wayland's contractors. The ship trembled with the weight of their fight. But here, below deck, the world had narrowed to 2 people. A faint creak, a door easing closed. She advanced, breath shallow, and pushed into the auxiliary engine room. Wayland stood near a loading hatch, the case at his feet. His pistol was steady, but his shoulders sagged, as if the weight of years had finally pressed down. "It didn't have to be this way," he said. Echo stepped into the room's center, rifle leveled. "It always had to be. You made sure of it when you called Zaraka a target." He swallowed hard, some mask cracking. "Zaraka wasn't what you thought. The intel was poisoned, bait for a warlord we couldn't afford to miss, if we'd hesitated." "You ordered me to fire on children," she snapped, her voice breaking. "And when I refused, you buried me." His eyes flickered, guilt, regret, maybe even shame. "I buried the story, not you. I thought you'd understand one day that the world isn't made for clean choices." She shook her head slowly. "You taught me to see angles, to plan beyond the obvious, but you never saw that control without conscience isn't order, it's destruction." Outside, a distant explosion rocked the ship, rattling loose bolts from the ceiling. Wayland crouched slowly, one hand on the apex case. "This tech isn't for me, Alexis. It's for every soldier who will die because politicians can't make a hard call. Apex forces their hands. It ends the guessing." Her voice softened, almost a whisper. "Or it starts the last war anyone ever fights." For a heartbeat, neither moved. Only the hiss of steam and the groan of metal filled the space. Then a shout from above, Cooper's voice. "Echo, they're breaching the bridge." The distraction was enough. Wayland lunged for the case, yanking it toward the hatch. Echo fired, a single round that shattered the locking mechanism, slamming the hatch closed before he could open it. He spun, fury twisting his features. She raised her rifle, steady despite the tremor in her chest. "It ends here." Wayland's expression softened again, almost sad. "Then do it. Make me your monster." Her finger hovered on the trigger. The weight of 3 years pressed down, betrayal, survival, grief. Killing him would be easy. Living with it might not be. She lowered the rifle slightly. "No, monsters make themselves." Wayland's lips parted, to argue or to plead, but the ceiling above them groaned violently. A container explosion had weakened the deck supports. Metal screamed. A beam tore loose, crashing between them. Wayland staggered, losing his pistol. The apex case slid across the floor, stopping at Echo's boots. She grabbed it, slinging it over her shoulder and back toward the corridor. Wayland rose, blood seeping from a cut on his temple, but made no move to pursue. "You can run," he said hoarsely, "but you can't stop what's coming." She met his gaze one last time. "Watch me." She turned and disappeared into the corridor. Up on the deck, chaos reigned. Rival mercenaries fled as Cooper's SEALs pushed forward, their rifles barking. Harrison dragged Grayson behind a stack of containers, shielding him from stray rounds. The freighter listed slightly, smoke curling into the sky. Echo emerged from the lower hatch, the apex case clutched tight. Cooper saw her, relief flashing across his face. "Got it. Got it." A loudspeaker crackled, Italian Coast Guard demanding surrender from all combatants. Floodlights swept the freighter, their beams cutting through the haze. The mercenaries, realizing their escape had closed, dropped weapons and scrambled to the rails. Wayland was nowhere to be seen. Harrison hustled the team toward the Zodiac. "Time to disappear before we're explaining this to 3 governments." They scrambled down the ropes, slipping into the night as sirens approached. The freighter receded behind them, a burning silhouette against the horizon. In the Zodiac's shadows, Echo kept her eyes on the ship's deck. A lone figure, Wayland watched them vanish, his posture unreadable. Then he stepped back into darkness. Days later, in a quiet NATO compound, Grayson secured the apex core in a vault. Cooper debriefed his men, all sworn to silence. Harrison sat on a bench outside, sipping coffee from a paper cup, his weathered face lined with exhaustion. Echo stood nearby, staring out at the rolling hills. The world looked so normal, birds wheeled in the sky, grass swayed in the breeze, but her heart still carried the weight of shadows. Cooper approached, his limp from the freighter fight barely noticeable. Command thinks Apex was never in danger. They're already rewriting the story. She didn't look at him. Wayland's still out there. He nodded. He'll surface again. Men like him always do. Then I'll be ready. He studied her for a moment. You could walk away, start over. Let someone else carry this. Her voice was soft but steady. I tried walking away once. It didn't save Zaraka. It won't save the next place either. Cooper's lips quirked in a faint smile. You're stubborn. Maybe, she said, a ghost of a smile on her own lips. But stubborn sometimes keeps people alive. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, Harrison joined her by the fence line. They watched the horizon burn with the colors of a quiet sunset, gold, crimson, violet. You did good, kid, he said quietly. The world won't know, but it'll breathe easier tonight because of you. She shook her head. The world breathes because of choices we can't undo. He glanced at her, regret. Responsibility, she replied. They stood in silence as crickets began to sing. Harrison finally said, some ghosts don't haunt, they guard. She let the words settle. Somewhere out there, Wayland was planning his next move. But tonight, for a fleeting moment, the air was still. Echo closed her eyes, remembering the seal's scream, the jungle voice that saved him, the long nights of doubt and exile. All of it had led here, to a fragile peace no one else would ever understand. Sometimes dignity doesn't shout, she thought. It doesn't demand credit or applause. It simply acts.